Pete Hegseth, he is an Army combat veteran, a former Fox News host, and if confirmed by the Senate, he will be America's next Secretary of Defense. Pretty big job. It's been a rocky nomination, however. Questions about his character, questions about his resume as well. We've covered those questions, but right now we want to take a step back and ask a far simpler and more general question. What does it actually take to be Secretary of Defense? If you know anything at all about the job, you probably know it involves running our biggest branch of government, but there's big, and then there's Pentagon big. $800 billion plus budget, bigger than the GDPs of countries like Taiwan, Belgium, and Sweden. And it's also America's largest employer. It makes Walmart seem small. 750,000 civilian employees, another 800,000 National Guard and Reserve Service members, and 1.3 million active duty soldiers and sailors. They're the ones with the guns. And the magnitude of the job includes a place in the chain of command just below the president, above the Joint Chiefs of Staff and above the heads of the Army, Navy, Air, and Space Force, all branches that the secretary would need to not only lead, but also discipline if people break the rules. And if that's not enough, there's also the National Security Agency, which, reports to the Pentagon, and the National Reconnaissance Office, which runs America's spy satellites and reports to the Pentagon. To do the job, in short, is to be in awe of the job, according to the comments of former defense secretaries pulled together recently by The Economist newspaper. The late Caspar Weinberger, for example, Ronald Reagan's defense secretary, said, quote, "You're never on vacation, you're never on leave, you're always on duty. 24 hours means 24 hours. In short, this is one of the hardest, maybe the most consequential job in America, short of being the president, although you could debate that one from time to time.
All right, joining us to discuss exactly what that entails is Army Colonel Myles Caggins III. He served as a staffer to 4 different U.S. defense secretaries, was on the National Security Council during the Obama administration, and is now a senior non-resident fellow at the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy. Myles, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is an important day for the country, given the confirmation hearings that are about to take place, that are taking place today. Tell us, though, I've always noticed secretaries of defense, they're not in military uniform. They're in suits because by law they have to be civilians. Why is that? And why is it that they couldn't have served within the previous 7 years?
That's right. Our nation, through laws, has decided that we should have civilian control of our military. The president, of course, serves as commander-in-chief, and the president's #1 advisor on military matters and defense matters is the Secretary of Defense. In recent years, we've seen waivers granted to Secretary Mattis and Secretary Austin to have served inside that statute of limitations for being retired general officers. But throughout history, we've seen secretaries of defense who have come from private industry, from Congress, business, academia, and other realms into those roles as secretary.
The job is really just so big. I've been kind of obsessed with reading what prior secretaries have said. Dick Cheney said he would start the day with a briefing by the CIA, and then he would get a copy of the president's daily briefing. And Gates said at the end of his day, he would end up in tears because he'd be writing letters to families that just lost a son or a daughter overseas. In between those 2 mile markers, what goes on 9 to 5? And we know it's not 9 to 5.
Well, the secretary works both inside the Pentagon and outside throughout the nation and the world. We know that the secretary is advising the president, but is also in the chain of command in the #2 role. The president is the leader, then the Secretary of Defense, and many people should know that the Secretary of Defense leads the combatant commands, the admirals, the 4 stars, and the generals who are in regions like Central Command in the Middle East or Indo-Pacific Command in the Pacific region. Those generals and admirals report through the Secretary of Defense to the Commander-in-Chief. The Secretary also has an important role managing the services, the departments of Army, Navy, and Air Force, and the Marine Corps and Space Force as well. And in this role, we see that the Secretary sets important policies and budgetary guidance, and it's a nonstop job, as you mentioned.
Speaking of nonstop, Jim Mattis, Trump's first Secretary of Defense, or SecDef, as they like to say in D.C., said that he, at one point, reportedly said he slept in gym clothes because, so that he would be ready in case Trump made a move overnight that he would have to respond to. How 24 hours is this operation?
Well, you should know that the secretary is able to touch anyone and talk to anyone 24 hours a day. They have dedicated staff that supports them with communications, and they have to be able to pick up that phone and make calls to launch military action or deter our adversaries or just answer simple questions. So it is a nonstop role, but our Defense Department, our nation, has made investments where the Secretary and their team is capable of deterring our adversaries or defeating our enemies.
Colonel Myles Caggins, thank you for your service and thank you for taking our simple questions this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.